over again. Didn't seem like the greatest idea in the world, but they eventually changed planes and canceled the flight. It all worked out. Okay, welcome to the Houston Beekeepers Association. I'm Joe Powers. I'm your president. We got Kyle Wolf here, secretary. Mike Simmons, our vice president.
Yes.
Just real quick, we have our mentor program, which we still need some more mentors. We've got, I know 2 people in West U area that are looking for a mentor. And so if somebody would be willing to help them out, that'd be great. You just need like a year experience. If you can keep bees alive for a year, you can show somebody else how to do it. We've got a few upcoming events. Wendy Hager, by the way, is our beekeeper mentor coordinator, and she can be reached at, I think it's called mentor@houstonbeekeepers.org. I think it's the right email address. And then we have, Wendy also has her Architecture of Bees opening reception tomorrow night on Wednesday at the Architecture Center downtown. Next Tuesday is the Harris County Beekeeper Association club meeting. Saturday and Sunday, June 4th and 5th, B2B Honey Collective is doing an introduction to beekeeping. That's $100 if you want to go to that. And then Tuesday the 21st is June 21st is our meeting. And Mike's going to show everybody how to use our extraction equipment, which be getting pretty close to starting to extract about that time. And then a really big event is on June 25th, Texas Beekeepers Association is doing their summer clinic. And that is going to be in Conroe. And it's $85 if you're a member of the TBA and $100 if you're not. And that's a great deal. It's like 8 hours of instruction all in one day. So that's a really good deal. And then on 19th, we're doing our, July 19th, we're doing our Houston Beekeepers Happy Hour. And we'll do that at the Architecture Center so we can all see Wendy's exhibit there at the same time. So let Mike introduce our speaker.
Am I in the right spot? Close enough. All right. Our speaker today, she's going to cover some of the bee laws. I mean, the laws for selling honey in Texas. Lynne Jones is a small-scale beekeeper in Sealy and owner of Brazos River Honey. She serves as the secretary-treasurer of the Fort Bend Beekeepers Association and is a member of the Central Texas Beekeepers Association. She's also original member of the Real Texas Honey program and is currently at the advanced level of the Texas Master Beekeeper program. And then also, if you come out to that Architecture Center thing, when we have our happy hour, I'm going to make a keg of, it's called a braggot. It's a barley-based beer with honey in it. So.
Thank you for having me. Let me give you a word of warning. I am severely hearing impaired, and I will be happy to answer your questions, but someone's probably going to have to like yell them up here to me. So let's go ahead and get started. Do y'all want to like shift over this way some? So options for selling honey in Texas. Raise your hand if you sold honey prior to the pandemic. Are you aware that the rules have changed? Okay, no? Well, now you'll find out that the rules have changed. Go ahead. So prior to the changes, we were what's called a small honey producer. And that was SB 1766, which went into effect in 2015, which allowed beekeepers to sell their honey with limitations without a food manufacturer's license. It was very much like a cottage food kind of thing. But as a Texas beekeeper, you have 3 options for legally selling honey. That is, used to be the small honey producer and is now the beekeeper honey producer as of July 16 of 2020. And you also can do the cottage food operator or licensed food manufacturer. But we're only going to talk about these 2, beekeeper honey producer and licensed food, and cottage food operator. So there was a major change, as I said, on July 16, 2020, and now beekeepers can sell their honey. Well, let me go backwards a little bit. You go. No, keep forward. Okay, so what happened was In 2018, the FDA, they published lots of all these publications, but they published one that was called Question and Answers. And in it, there was a couple of questions that had to do with honey. And one of the answers was many activities associated with beekeeping and honey production are within the farm definition. And what does this mean? It means that according to the FDA, beekeepers are farmers, and how the rules that have to do with the farm are what apply to us and our honey. So simply put, honey is a raw agricultural commodity, and therefore the FDA farm rules apply to honey. But until those questions were answered in the way they were, the state of Texas did not view us as a farm. So once that was published, I said, okay, you're farmers. So 2 years later, on July 16, 2020, the Texas Department of State Health Services, the state, updated their website. They have a page on their website that's called frequently asked questions as well. And when they published this information, and I'll let you see it in just a second, it basically made small honey producer irrelevant. That's still on the books, but you can just ignore them and do what the state of Texas says. So you do not need a license to bottle and sell raw honey produced from your own bees, whether you're selling direct to the consumer or retail or wholesale. So let's go with the beekeeper honey producer. Now, this is the state's page that I mentioned, frequently asked questions, food manufacturer, and it has lots of questions. And if you go all the way down to the very bottom, it has beekeeper honey production frequently asked questions. And don't worry if you can't read this, go ahead. Did anything change for beekeepers selling honey in Texas, blah, blah, blah? Yes, go click again. Beekeepers and their honey, their farms, and you don't have to have any kind of license to sell, as long as you're engaged in allowable farm activities. So what has to happen if you're selling, and we're only talking about pure raw honey, that's your honey. One has to be pure raw honey from your bees and hives. The activities that you are allowed to do are harvesting your honey, packing or holding honey, packaging, labeling. It says you can dry honey, blending other raw honey with your honey. Now I know this probably doesn't make sense, like, whoa, what? I can add someone else's honey to mine. You have to understand that the farm rules are for all kinds of farmers, whether you're growing wheat or soybeans or whatever. And sometimes those do blend other, so because it's permitted for them, it's permitted for us as beekeepers as well. So other activities that are permitted, and those other ones you saw were straight from the website. These are ones that I've talked with the state about, like, what about this? Can we do this? Can we do this? You can refrigerate your honey. You can freeze honey, warm it to reliquefy. But what things that you cannot do, these are considered manufacturing operations. You cannot use heat to pasteurize. You cannot whip in air to make whipped honey. So just as an aside here, whipped honey, creamed honey, set honey, spun honey, churned honey, they're all the same thing. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Yummy, put it on a spoon. It's okay. So you can, and this is how it's typically made, is that you start with your seed, which is already crystallized honey, already set honey or creamed honey. And about a 10-to-1 ratio, you mix it up with your liquid honey. The liquid honey cannot have any crystals to start with. You put in as little air as possible. You do not want to whip it. Then you refrigerate it, and about a week, maybe 2, you will have creamed honey. So click. Things that you can do, you can stir, you can blend another raw honey and refrigerate. And these are all permitted operations. So you can sell pure creamed honey under these rules. Now, the dice method uses a really high heat, so you probably won't want to do that. Whether it's high enough for pasteurization, that's kind of arguable, but most of us don't want to use high heat on our honey anyway. Let's click. So don't do that. You're not allowed to do that. That is considered a manufacturing operation. And it doesn't really make creamed honey. It makes this foamy, yucky stuff. Don't do that. Next slide. Keep going. Okay, so one too many. So you can not add or infuse anything to the honey. So if you're adding cinnamon to the honey, you can't sell under these rules. I know someone that was adding extra pollen to their honey. That would technically be not allowed either. Cannot do these things. Go ahead. So where can you do this farm operation? Well, everything, of course, is all in the technical terms that the government likes to use. At your primary production farm, which is going to be any location or building on the property where you have your apiary, or at the secondary activities farm, which is going to be an operation not where your apiary is, but still it's yours. It doesn't have to be your property, it just has to be your operation. Well, what it means basically is you don't have to do everything at your apiary. You can do this at your home, but not just anywhere. So you probably couldn't rent the church's kitchen and do it there. That would not be exactly under the rules. Okay. So you don't need a honey house. You don't need a facility inspected by the Texas Department of State Health Services. You don't need a license. You don't have to register with the state. As long as you stay in the allowable farm activities. And a food handler certificate is not required, but you know, it only costs like $7 online, $8. I always personally think it's a good idea to take it, but you don't have to. So requirements for sales, just like before, you're still limited to the state of Texas. Before there was a dollar limit, there's no dollar limit. You do not have to do the direct to the consumer. You do not have to be in person. Anyone associated with the farm can sell. Before, it was only yourself and your immediate family members that were allowed to sell under the previous rules. As long as they're associated with your farm, that could be your family, it could be an employee, whoever you want. So back to the rules with the state page. So it says, are there any laws that apply to the beekeeper raw honey producer? And the key points you want to get here is that having to do with the subject of adulteration and misbranding provisions of 431 or the Texas Agricultural Code Title 6, Chapter 131. So we're going to call them 431 and 131. The Department of State Health Services has their authority over those subjects. So specifically adulterated honey and mislabeled honey. So for what we're talking about then is adulteration means adding something to the honey to make it more, whether that's water or corn syrup or whatever, that would be adulteration. Misbranding just means that the label is false or misleading. Now, the 431, it is long. We only have to be concerned with the parts that would deal with the topics we talk about. So first off, on your label, you must have the name and place of business. So it can be your name, or it could be the name of your honey, your company name. And it also has to have an address of either the primary or secondary farm. So for most of that, that's either our apiary or our home. You cannot use a PO box. You can not use a physical address that's really a box. So like mailboxes, etc. You can't do that. You cannot use a website. There is an exception to that though. And this is my exact correspondence with the state of Texas. So when it comes to the addresses, a lot of people, they don't want to put their home address on their label. If your business, if you can find that business in a phone book and the phone book has your address, then you don't have to put it on the label. You still have to have your business name, city, state, and zip code, but you don't have to put the street address. And that can be a actual hard copy phone book, but it can also be online. So this is an example of, like, if I looked up Houston Beekeepers Association, over here to the right, this is what pulls up on the internet. And this is basically like a directory, and it has the address. So if your business was Acme Honey Company and you type that in and the address popped up online, not in your website, but in a directory, then that's okay. You can get away with only putting the name of your business, city, state, and zip code. Now, if I did Central Texas Beekeepers, what I got was just websites. So in this case, if this was Acme Honey, it didn't pop up with the directory looking thing. So that's not gonna help them get out of not putting the address on your label. So in addition to the name and place of your business, you have to have, this is straight from the wording, an accurate statement of uniform location. Just skip that. What it means is you have to have the weight statement in a uniform location on the label, on the front label, okay? It has to conform with the requirements of section 431-181. So we're gonna go to another little area here, which says that all labels, and now it's gonna refer us to yet a whole nother thing. Don't you love government regs? They just keep referring you. And if you don't look it all up, then that's when you get in trouble. So still in 431, it says on your label, you have to have the common or usual name of the consumer commodity. For us, honey, raw honey, pure honey. So going to that other referenced section 4 thing, it says you have to have the basic commodity, a statement identifying, okay, we already said that's honey, so we're good there. The name and place of the business of the manufacturer, we already said, yeah, we know we have to do that. The net quantity of contents in both metric and inch pound units. So if you only read the Texas regs, you might not realize that you do have to have both metric and inch pound units. Hang tags. Hang tags are not allowed for the required information. So here on the left, they just used it for advertising purposes. It's got cute stuff on it. But on the left, that tag, I mean, on the right, that tag actually has the required information, and that cannot be on a hang tag. That's per the FDA, because I argued with the state of Texas about the meaning of the word affix. And so they got the FDA involved, and the FDA straightened me out and said, no, you cannot use a hang tag. So on a case-by-case basis, you can use it, but we won't have that in with honey. The nutrition label, you don't have to have it as long as your annual sales are less than $500,000 or your food sales are less than $50,000. One thing that I don't have added to this is that if you make claims, health claims, then you do have to use it. So if you're going to say something like better for you than sugar, cures allergies, those are health claims. And then you do have to include that. So don't make health claims. So switching to the other document, the 131, it says, if your label uses the word honey, liquid honey, extracted honey, strained honey, pure honey, to identify the product, it must be pure honey. Well, that's all we're talking about here, so that's good. If your label uses a picture or drawing of a bee, hive, or comb, and the contents resembles honey, it must be pure honey. Well, still, that's all we're talking about, pure honey. But if you're going to use that same label on something that you've infused, then you might have some problems. So keep that in mind as far as bees, comb, and hives. If you're using that on your label, you can use it on the pure stuff, but you cannot use that same label on anything that you have infused or added cinnamon or whatever to. But again, it has to resemble honey. So if it doesn't look like honey, like if you've put a lot of cinnamon and now it's like this really dark burgundy color and it doesn't look like honey anymore, or if you've added something that you can see it's not pure honey, you've got sprigs of lavender or something in there, you can see it's not pure honey, then that's okay. But I mean, it's kind of a tricky thing, whereas if you're not thinking about it all the time, next thing you know, you're using that label on something you're not supposed to. And if you violate those, that is a Class B misdemeanor. So what is no longer required, you don't have to have the warning statement anymore about, oh wait, I'm sorry, I skipped. This has never been mandatory, but it's a good idea to put the warning, don't feed honey to infants. Again, not required, but it's recommended. But what you don't have to have anymore is the statement that says bottled or packaged in a facility not inspected by the Texas Department of State Health Service. You do not need that on your label anymore. As long as it's a pure honey and you followed all the rules and you haven't done any manufacturing processes. So it all sounds complicated, but really it just boils down to this. You have to have your name and the address. You have to have honey, pure honey, whatever. And you have to have the weight statement in both ounces or pounds and in grams. And it's really not that big a deal. And you can put stuff on, you can't put any of this on the back. This has to be on the front, all of these, okay? But if you want to also add the voluntary warning statement, that does not have to be on the front. You can put that on the back label. So in summary, you can now sell pure raw honey in person, by mail order, by phone, online, from any location you choose. And you can, you can sell it direct to the consumer, your neighbor or whoever. But now also you can sell it to stores. You can sell it to restaurants. You can sell it to gift shops or any other retail or wholesale business in Texas. You don't have to have your bottle, you don't have to bottle in an inspected facility, nor do you need a food manufacturer license. But if you want to sell anything other than pure honey, you have two options: the cottage food operator and the licensed food manufacturer. So let me just throw out there, I'm not an attorney. These are my opinions, should not be considered legal advice. Conduct your own research or consult an attorney. But I have a lot of the information that I gather this from. You can get that in links, because I will tell you, it is hard to find this stuff online, on the websites. Even when I know it's there, sometimes I just can't hardly find it. So I wrote an article a year ago for Texas Bee Supply, and they have an online magazine. You can go back to that May magazine, and most of the links to what I just told you can be found there. So you can go and click on those links and see what it actually says yourself. Do you have any questions about specifically the labeling and the pure honey, what you can and cannot do? Yes.
Now, if you add a little bit water to re-solution honey, that's a violation?
If what?
If you add just a tiny amount of water to re-solution crystallized honey, is that a violation?
I would say yes. I would say yes.
Okay.
Because you've added something to it. Yeah.
But they couldn't find.
I realize there's water content in honey, but you have added something to it. And so that is, that's going to be the, whatchamacallit word, not misbranding, but the other adulteration. Yes, sir.
Internet sales. So if I do internet sales, I can only do the people in Texas.
Yes, but
What- So now,
let me just say, I'm telling you what the legal requirements are. If you don't ask them where they live or you mail it, I mean, is the state of Texas going to come down on you?
yeah. The
So-
other thing is you sell wholesale to a store and then they internet sell it to
Right.
somebody in Colorado.
And I mean, selling it, and I'm not a legal attorney on this, but if you sell it online, you're in Texas when you sell it, right? Where they choose to have it shipped, I don't think that's relevant. The sale has to be in Texas.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You said that your address has to be on it, or it has to be like we're Powers Farm. So if you type Powers Farm into your computer, you would need to come up in the directory.
You're talking about the,
with our address.
yes,
So how do you get your place?
that's a Google question. Right, and you might be able to get that, make that happen. That's a good point.
I've had my address on balls for like 4 years, to address my house. But I sell like 500 or 600 pounds a year. Nobody showed up to my house.
Okay, well, I have
Yeah.
another question. So could you have like a little bag of spices as a hang tag or something like that?
Like you're just adding them, you're just including them as a free gift with your honey. Well, as long as it's still labeled as pure honey, what they do with those little extra lanyard bag of spices is their business. I would make sure that they understand that's a free complimentary gift. You're not selling the spices. That's just included as a gift. Go ahead. So you can skip that. I just want to throw in a bit about Real Texas Honey. Do we have any Real Texas Honey? Very good, excellent. Let me just tell you a little bit about it. It's a nonprofit organization that promotes honey from Texas. And there are some rules that you have to follow if you are going to be in this program. Some of them seem, they're okay. Annual dues right now, it's $20 plus 70 cents per hive that is producing honey. So you don't have to count nukes or anything like that. You have to be registered with the Texas Apiary Inspection Service. You have to, this only applies to pure honey. You can't put this on anything else. It has to be raw. And they say you cannot heat above 120. So if you're trying to decrystallize, you have to stay below 120. If you're going to put this label on it, the Real Texas Honey label. Real honey means pure from plants, not sugar water. You can't use the word organic. And you are subject to surprise inspection, like send me your honey, we're going to analyze it. So that's just something that they do. And so what do you get for all this, right? Well, you get these pretty shiny labels that you can put on your honey. And you also get your name. So it would be on two different maps. One, it would be on the Texas Beekeepers Association map. And anyone who wants their honey listed that they're a member of TBA can be on the map. But if you're a Real Texas Honey, your thing will be a little B as opposed to just a little dot. So there's that. And then there's a separate Real Texas Honey map where it's just Real Texas Honey people. So cottage food operator, I include this because a lot of people do want to do something extra. They want to add a spice or a flavoring to the honey. So you can sell, not on the raw requirements, raw pure, but you can sell as a cottage food operator or as a licensed food manufacturer. Anyone can sell this way. So anyone that takes honey and adds it and bottles it, they can go to the farmer's market or whatever. It's not just beekeepers. Go ahead. So in 2019, there were actually a lot of changes to the cottage food rules as well. And there are many, many products that a person can sell having assembled or cooked them from their own home. But I'm only going to talk about infused honey because we would spend hours and hours talking about everything else. So if you're going to add a flavoring or anything like that, that's going to be cottage food. The rules are it has to be made in your home. So you cannot go to the church kitchen, it has to be in your home. And it has to be with appliances used in the home. So you can't rent a giant commercial thing that's going to mix. That would be against the rules. You can sell at other locations. You don't have to sell out of your home. You can go to the farmer's market or set up a booth or whatever. Skip, it's a little bit too fast for me. But the producing, packing, and storing has to be from your home. So you can't store it at some restaurant, even though you wouldn't want to have your stuff in a restaurant anyway. You can't store it at your mom's house. It has to be at your house. No licenses required. You don't have to submit anything to the government, but you are still subject to home association rules. So if your HOA says you're running a business and we don't like it, you would still be, so you probably can't have a big sign on your driveway saying, Acme Honey sold here. You do have to have a current food handler certificate. So that online, $7, you do have to, and have to keep it current. I think it's good for 2 years. You can have employees. Your employees have to have a food handler certificate or be directly supervised by you. So if they're in the kitchen, you're there too, you're supervising, they don't have to have that. But again, just have them do it. It's cheap. Members of your household also can work, but they don't have to have a certificate or supervision. So back to 131 again. So the label on a product that resembles honey cannot use a picture of a drawing of a beehive or comb. The product name honey cannot be in a larger size of type or print or in a more prominent position than the other words. So for instance, the first one, cinnamon honey. Cinnamon is not smaller than the word honey. That's okay. But in the second one, cinnamon is smaller, honey is larger. That's not allowed. I mean, it appeals to my sense of squareness, but that's just not allowed. And I catch myself having to redo labels because I do it the way I want it to make it look good. And then I realize, oh no, I'm not in compliance anymore. So if the product's label bears a list of other ingredients, the word honey must be on the list in the same, so you can't say honey, cinnamon, whatever, they have to be the same size. But you don't actually have to have your ingredients on cottage food products. And violating these are Class B misdemeanor. Now, there are also rules for cottage food. You have to have your name and physical address on the cottage food production operation. And they didn't tell me that there is an out if your business is, so you would have to ask the state about that. Common or usual name of the product. You do have to disclose if you've got any ingredient in there that is a major food allergen. So if you're making something that has nuts in it, then now you have to state nuts. Even though it might be visible and clearly looks like nuts, you have to state that on the label. But you don't have to say made in a kitchen that has nuts. You don't have to say that. I guess the idea is that if you're buying something from someone's home, you should assume that they have those allergens available. You must have the statement that you don't have to have a pure honey. This you still have to have. Made in a home kitchen and it's not inspected by the Department of State Health Services or a local health department. And the labels must be legible. You are still limited to sales within the state of Texas. Sales have to be direct to the consumer. So that means I can sell to you here. I can, we can be at the farmer's market and people can come buy from me. You can sell online, but at least 1/2 of the transaction has to be in person. I think I'm going to get into that in a little more in a minute. No wholesale sales, so you cannot sell to restaurants, you cannot sell to grocery stores or other business, because then that takes away the direct to the person consumer. You're selling it to someone else, and then they're going to sell it or use it in their restaurant. So at least one part of the transaction must be made in person. And this is going to sound confusing, but if you think about it like wedding cakes, okay? A person can order a wedding cake online because you're going to deliver it in person. Or the person can come to your bakery and buy a cake, paying you direct, and then you're going to ship it someplace. So at least one part of the transaction, either the sale or the delivery, has to be in person. There's also rules about if you're doing something online or by mail, you have to, all those things that are required information, like not made in a kitchen that was not inspected, all that has to be provided to the consumer before you accept payment. So if you're on the phone with somebody, you have to tell them this product was made in a kitchen not inspected, but you could also have it on your website so that they would see it before they can make a purchase. You can have it in catalog, but you just have to make sure that all those things that are mandatory that you have on your label or whatever, they have to know those before they make the purchase. Your annual gross income from the sale of food cannot exceed $50,000. And the list of foods is actually really long of what you can sell under cottage food. I would suggest that you go to the state of Texas website, which it's another page just like before, except this one says cottage food. And there's just a huge long list of all the things that you can sell. I mentioned you might want, if you ever want to ask the state a question, regardless of whether it's cottage food or the beekeeper rules, there is a form that you can get online and you submit that to the state of Texas, and they are required to answer you within 30 days. Whatever their answer is, that's your rule. And go ahead and click. It's called a request for official determination on food regulations. And again, that link is available online.
What? No, the office is back there. Go ask that office. That's the office, yeah.
So if you submit this to the state of Texas and they give you an answer that you like, make sure that you hold on to that form forever and ever and ever, because that is your permission to do whatever it was that you asked about. So
be a cottage food operator unless you're selling infused honey or something like that. Otherwise, you just want to be a raw honey salesman.
I'm sorry?
You don't want to sell as a cottage food operator unless you're doing infused honey.
Correct.
Because it complicates. Otherwise, if you're selling raw honey,
You're making it harder on yourself. Right, but you can do both. You can have your raw honey sold under the beekeeper production, and you can have the infused honey sold under cottage. You can have both as long as you keep your labeling right and don't make sales in a way that you're not allowed to.
figure that out.
So yeah, so there's a link to this form. This is one of the forms that you have trouble finding online, but there's a link that you can use to get that form. Okay, so pop quiz. We have 4 different labels here. We're assuming that on the back, we have the physical address and the not inspected statement. Which of these do you think is a label that's in compliance with the cottage food and the 131 requirements? So on the first one, so yes or no? You say, you think it's a good label? Okay. Think it's not a good label? Okay. B, good label or bad label? Bad label. Okay. C, good label or bad label? Can't read it? Well, it says ghost pepper honey the words honey is not bigger than the other. It's in the same font. That hashing, that's not honeycomb. That was just me covering up all the real stuff that was on the label to not embarrass anyone, you know? So good or bad?
No address?
We're assuming that that's on the back, because you can put the address on the back and the not inspected statement as well. So on D, good or bad?
Bad.
Okay, so I'll give you what I graded them as. So B and D, they're not in compliance. One, they have the word honey bigger than everything else right away. But also they use a picture of a bee hive or comb on a product that resembles honey, but is not pure honey. So to me, B and D, even though they've had stuff added to them, to me, those still look like honey and could be confused as being pure honey. But on A and C, I think they're okay because obviously A, it has a B, but it doesn't look like pure honey to me. Okay, and the same with C. Even though it definitely looks like honey, you can see it's not pure honey. So even though they may have been out of compliance in some other way, the fact that it doesn't look like honey, pure honey, it doesn't apply. But if it did look like pure honey, then those rules do apply. Did I confuse y'all? It's tricky. You have to really look at every single thing that you sell, or just don't use a bee, comb, or hive on your label. So now that the rules for selling pure raw honey have drastically changed, the need for operating as a licensed food manufacturer, I don't know why you would need it. The only reason I can think of to still have a license, still have an inspected facility, is if you want to sell outside of Texas, if you want to sell flavored or infused honey, retail or wholesale, you want to put those in the store and not have to do the direct, then you would need a license. If you want to sell a product that's not a time and temperature controlled for safety food, like a honey butter, if it has to be refrigerated, then the cottage rules are not going to work for you anymore. And it might need it because your buyer requires it. So if you were selling to HEB, they might say you need to have a licensed manufacturer. I don't know, but they might. So if you're thinking in your head, I really want to sell my flavored honey in the gift shop that my sister has, so then you would need licensed food. I'm not going to go into details, but just an overview. Has to operate from a room or building that meets the requirements of an inspected facility. The license to get is not very expensive. As long as your sales are less than $10,000, it's $103 for 2 years. That's not that bad. You have to successfully complete and maintain your basic food safety education. You have to conduct your operation in accordance with the requirements for retail food. You have to label. I'm not going to go into details because when you start talking about the FDA, then that might be different than what I told you for cottage food. So in conclusion, selling honey is at a really sweet spot for beekeepers. Very few restrictions for selling pure raw honey as a beekeeper honey producer. If you want to sell flavored honey, you can still do that under the reasonable restrictions of cottage food. But if you absolutely must be licensed, the license itself isn't expensive. And although building your own compliant facility kitchen is pretty expensive, there are other options, like you can rent time in a facility that's already inspected. If you know someone that owns a restaurant, you can rent some time there and you would still be in compliance. Again, I'm not an attorney. Do your own research.
Okay, well, we're
Now-
gonna sue you anyway.
I have a couple of cheat sheets for you. So everything we just discussed, whether it was for beekeeper, honey producer, cottage food operator, or licensed food, what you can sell, where you can sell is on this cheat sheet. I also have another 3-page handout that is just to do with the labels, and it covers all three of the different options. And to get these, if you're on Facebook, you can, and if you're a member of the Central Texas Beekeepers group, you can go to where it says files and then look down and you'll see those two PDFs. You can print them yourself. If you're a member of the Texas Friendly Beekeepers, it's also posted there. Go to files. They're there. You can download them. If you aren't on Facebook, you can send an email to info@fortbendbeekeepers.org, not com, org, and just say, selling honey handouts, please send them to me and I will attach them and email you back. So just like there were all the links for the pure honey in the June magazine of last year, you're going to find most of the links for cottage food and licensed food. So if you're like, that Lynne Jones, I do not believe a word she says, you can go to these links and look it up yourself. Are there questions now about cottage food or still the raw honey? No.
Sound like just give it away and expect the donations a simple way.
Just put out a little tip jar, recommended tip. So is it like reversing back on you? I think that's the end of it. So thank you very much. So Joe brought in his label, and
Yeah.
this is one you're still using?
Well, not really. We're probably gonna use this year because we got to change it. Doesn't quite meet the requirements.
Okay. So we can pass this around and y'all can grade it and tell us whether it meets the requirements for the pure honey.
It met the old requirements.
Manufactured cottage?
It's cottage. It was under the old.
Okay, so you're
cottage
selling
rules.
under cottage food?
The old cottage rules,
Oh, okay.
right, before the change. So
Oh,
now we would just be a
It
beekeeper farm.
beekeeper honey producer.
Yeah.
But what is missing?
The address. probably.
Your address. And you don't need that bottled statement anymore. I like that you have say, please recycle. And then just be careful with the bee because he does have a bee on the front and a bee here. If you decide to sell something that's not pure honey, then that would not be compliant. But it is a pretty label.
I couldn't figure out why I did it, but I noticed everything else had brands.
That's what I do. I copy mine a lot from like a major manufacturer. Can you use volume measurements?
No.
Which kind of measurements?
Heights.
No, honey is sold by weight. And I read something once, I don't know how true this is, but because you can put honey in so many different shapes, it's harder for the consumer to compare two different, that might actually be the whole the same amount, but one this shape makes the honey look smaller or bigger. So that's why it's required by weight. I don't know if that's true, but that's just what I read. Because weight is weight. But it does confuse people because you have a pint jar and it has 22 ounces instead of something else. Yeah, I've had people tell me, I'm not stupid. Because it should have 24 ounces. I'm like, oh, okay, honey weighs different than
It weighs more.
everything else. So, yeah.
All right, we just happened to have the day before yesterday, one of these boxes I've got hung up a tree at a friend's farm had a swarm decide they're going to move in, and he happened to be there right when they flew up to start walking into the box. So I thought, this would be a real good day to show you guys a swarm box. So this is a pretty standard 40-liter volume swarm box. I use this stuff here, Swarm Commander, for the bait. So you can, I don't recommend taking it out of there. You just smell it. It's basically lemongrass oil. And what this is, it's just a rectangle box. It's made out of like 3/8 inch plywood, exterior grade, left over from a house construction project. And I put 5 frames in it. I put 3 frames that have a little starter strip, and 3 wires, because where I put these out is about anywhere from 5 miles to 90 miles from where I'm going to take them. And I'm afraid that the hive will fall apart, bounce down the highway before I get there. So I kind of strengthen it. So I put 2 in the front. I use 2 old used foundations in the middle, and then 1 more of these wired ones in the back. It's real simple. And then when I move it, it's just basically like, installing a nuke. It's the same process. And then I spray a little of that lemongrass oil. Oh, stuck. And I spray a little more lemongrass oil on a cotton ball that I stick in an open baggie that I stick in the bottom. And that seems to work pretty well. It's pretty easy. And then my rope here, if you're noticing that rope, I got that so that I can basically, using a trucker's hitch, tie the lid on so it doesn't fall off, because putting a brick on this when I'm reaching up over my head, that just would, I've got Band-Aids on already, you can see. And then I've got this little screen door that when I'm ready to take them, I wait until dark and I just swing this spring door in place. I duct tape around it because it's warped already, but that keeps them in, and I can just basically, I could literally put this in the back seat of my car because the bees can't get out of it when that's in place. So it's really simple. All right, turn over.
What's your thought on the best height to hang your box?
The height that I've selected is the height that I can reach from standing in the bed of my 4-wheeler or my pickup truck. That way, whatever vehicle I can get to the tree with, I just put it up high enough where I can just back up to it and stand on it and reach up there comfortably, because I got to be able to reach up with my drill and drill a hole in the tree to put my bolt in or nail a nail or whatever, and then lift this thing up and hook it on it. And I don't want to be dragging around a 16-foot ladder to get it up. They talk about putting it 20 feet up in a tree and 30 feet on a tree. It's like, that sounds like a good way to get yourself hurt. And the bees, this one came out of our backyard. I've already caught 1 swarm this year in my backyard. It's hanging on a 7-foot fence. I mean, literally, I just reach up and hook it while I'm standing on the ground. I'm not even standing on anything. And the bees, happy-go-lucky, go in there. So you don't have to go like a mile high. Just put foundation in, because the bees are looking for a big, hollow, empty space. So this is from, I guess it was Randy Seelig. Yeah, they did a study. They were looking for a big, hollow, empty space that's 30 to 50 liters in size. So they said 40 liters should be perfect. Okay, I'll go with that, because these guys have studied. I just copied them. And I wanted it so that I can use my standard frames for a standard brew box. No brain damage later down the road.
Do you find you have a lot of problems that they double tone it on the bottom of the frame?
No, they haven't done that yet. It's only once I see they moved in, about 3 weeks later, I take the strap down
So
and
you take them down,
move it.
because I've had problems
Doing the bottom.
double tone.
So I left one up longer than that, and we were afraid that was going to happen. So we brought some frames and rubber bands so we could cut it off and put it in the frames and rubber band plates. But it hadn't happened. So I got lucky. Yeah. But this works for me because I don't have a vacuum cleaner you need to go get a swarm when somebody calls you. And I don't have to wait. I don't have to be on a call for somebody to call me. When the bees have done their thing, then when I feel like it and I'm comfortable to go get it, I can go get it. And it saves me, $250 every time I do it. So it's a good deal. Yeah.
I know that there's certain, like, 2 square inches.
I drilled 2, I think these are 1-inch holes to connect. And I took some nails, nailed in there, and then just you can kind of see them. Come and look at this afterwards. You can look at it and put them in there so like a mouse would have a hard time getting in or whatever. I did find a little grass snake in one of these one time, but he was already dead, so I don't know how he got in there.
But is it better on the side or center?
That's where the
I don't think it matters.
guy that I saw recommended put it. This works, so I don't know what's better. I don't know. And they would do exactly what they want. I mean, they'll move into a crack in a house and build inside the 4-inch space of the wall. So where's that 40 liters? So I don't know. Okay, real quick. upcoming events, let me remind you guys again, tomorrow is Wendy's opening thing, the Architecture of Bees at the Architecture Center. Harris County Beekeepers next Tuesday, B2 Bees deal on June 4th and 5th at $100. June 21st is our next meeting, and that's going to be honey extraction. And Mike's going to show us how to do that. And then June 25th is one y'all really should try to get on your calendar. That's the Texas Beekeepers Association Summer Clinic. It's $85 if you're a member and $100 if you're not a member. And that's an all-day deal. You can get 8 hours worth of beekeeping education in that in one day. And then the 19th of July, we'll have our summer happy hour. And that's going to be the Architecture Center Houston. So we can see Wendy's event.
That school, how much different is it from the bee school they had in Brown?
It's very similar.
Okay, so if you went to that, you probably get a lot of bees.
There's quite a lot of the similar classes that are offered. Yeah, might be different speakers though. You know, I don't know. I've been to 3 different ones in the same year and wound up taking classes that were totally different at all 3 at each one. So there's so many classes offered that you can only see your 8 at the most anyway. So all right, I'm gonna turn over to Mike for the
Online question asking if there's a schematic for your smallpox.
yes, somewhere there is. I will find it, get it to you, Kyle, and then you can post it on our website somehow. You got one?
Yeah, I got one. If y'all want to become the super expert knowledge person on swarms, Dr. Tom Seeley has a book called Honeybee Democracy. And it's all about swarms and how they decide to swarm and how they decide where they're going to live, what they're looking for when they live. It's a great book. It's pretty thick. Take you a while to read. It's actually a really well written book too. Actually, all of his books are really, really good if you're looking for something. I'm on now. Some of the things like I make that I sell a lot of are like beeswax candles. They're super easy to make. You just dump hot melted beeswax in there and then dump some fragrance oils in there. I found this is a pure beeswax one, but I've also found that mixing them with soy wax, it actually smells better, which is what a lot of the customers I have are looking for. Some of the other things I make are like soaps. These actually do have FDA labeling requirements that you have to worry about. But like this one has beeswax and honey in it. This one's just honey, and then it has a loofah in it. And then I make other ones with just honey in them. And then I sell a lot of this just plain beeswax. So I always have, you always have wax left over when you cap it. I sell this stuff for $1 an ounce. I've had people buy it for all kinds of crazy reasons. I had a guy buy it to level a pool table. He wanted to use beeswax instead of paraffin wax. It's okay. As long as your money's good, I'll sell it to you whatever you want. Like lip balm. I make like 50 of these at a time. It takes me like 20 minutes. I sell the bejesus out of these things at farmers markets. I'll sell like 30 of them in a day usually. And they're super easy to make. I'm not going to go into labeling requirements, but there's a lot of other things you can do that you don't have to have a cottage food license. And then if you do want to know about getting a food manufacturer's license, I've had one. Just send me an email. But the way the laws are written now, I would not get one. It's not worth the effort.
What about insurance requirements? Do they recommend having anything to other products or?
If you're going to sell, for me personally, if I was going to sell to anyone besides family and friends, I would get insurance. The insurance for a beekeeper is $300 a year. It's totally worth it. And that gives you $1 million of coverage. So, I mean, you have to try pretty hard to mess up honey to where it will make somebody sick, but
I guess with the products and stuff like cosmetics.
well, I mean, even honey. So, I use this electric stainless steel extractor. So if one of my extractors has a little piece break off and gets in my honey and somebody buys that and gets hurt from it, it doesn't come out in the strainer or whatever. It's just that peace of mind. I'm not incorporated, so they can come after my personal assets if somebody sues me. So
So we had a question online asking about, wants to know Mike's plans and steps to make the lip balm and such.
man, if you get on YouTube, there's like 1,000 different tutorials. I had to play with my beeswax amount a lot. So the first ones I made were like super hard. Nobody wanted them. And then I made some that were nice and soft, but they melted in like your pocket. So it takes a little bit while to get it perfected. And then if you want to know how to make soaps, there's if you get on YouTube, there's Brambleberry. They sell soap ingredients. So they'll tell you how to make them with, you can, like this is a lye soap. So I have to mix this with lye. It's kind of dangerous, a little bit dangerous. You just have to wear some safety gear. But there's also other different kinds, like this is a melt-in pour soap. So it's a glycerin base. You just heat it up, mix what you want in it, and then pour it into a mold, let it set. You know, package it, label it for the FDA, and then sell it. No, I did not. I bought them, but they're organic. And this is one of the door prizes tonight. Is there any other questions? Let's do the door prizes.
General question for anybody that's, last year I set a swarm trap in a tree on this ditch bank and they moved in short order. I let them up there a while, then I moved it down into the box, a regular hive on the box, and they were doing real well. Came back 6 weeks, found the bees abandoned and still a gallon of honey in the hive and dead comb, you know, where the larvae had died. It just looked like the bees just left. What could have caused it? I mean, what should I have done different to prevent that? Or
If they absconded,
yeah, there wasn't a dead bee left, and there was still I harvested a gallon of honey in the, you know.
usually in my experience, that's usually caused from varroa mites or some other predator or pest. But it's usually varroa mites.
One of the questions, there were fire ants right under there. Would fire ants push bees out?
I haven't really ever had fire ants get in one of my hives, but I mean, I get if they were getting in there, they could, yeah.
Because I found fire ants in the box. So that's why I'm trying to figure out, you know,
Yeah, there was
what
some.
I can do to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, something made them abscond. Usually the only times I've found bees that have abscond, the mites get too high and they're dying.
Well, that's what it could have been, because I didn't check for mites.
Yeah.
So, and they just moved in, and maybe that's why they moved in. They were leaving a hive with hive Borrelia.
All right, we'll do the door prizes. Number 9 is Ron Collins. So you can pick this one or one of those two back there. A bee brush and a hat.
Thank you.
And then where am I at here? Dan. Yeah, that guy. And Eric Frisk. You know, just pick something from that back table.
All right.
That's it.
All right. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, especially. That's good.